The sound that morning was wrong. Not wrong enough to be alarming, just wrong enough that Camille stopped moving and listened without knowing why. Hank was breathing differently. She could hear it from the kitchen. A rapid, shallow pattern, the kind he made when he was tracking something with his nose. She poured Theo's oatmeal and waited for the sound to stop. It didn't stop. Rosie had been sick for 6 days. A respiratory virus, the kind that lives in every toddler's daycare in October and eventually reaches every house attached to it. She had turned the corner. The fever had broken 48 hours ago. She had eaten breakfast. She had walked the length of the hallway twice. She was, by every clinical measure Camille had been applying, recovering. Camille was a pediatric occupational therapist. She had spent 8 years evaluating children's sensory and developmental responses. She knew how to read a child. She was not worried about Rosie that morning. She was thinking about a client case file she needed to update and whether there was enough coffee left for a second cup. Hank was in Rosie's room. She went to the doorway and looked in. The 18-month-old was on the floor with her foam blocks, building something she kept knocking over with her own arm on accident. Hank was positioned directly in front of her, muzzle 6 inches from her face, absolutely still, not interacting, not soliciting play, watching her the way he watched the squirrels outside the dining room window, with total focused attention. Camille said his name. He lifted his eyes to her, then dropped them back to Rosie. She came into the room and sat on the floor and put her hand on his back. His muscles were tight, not aggressive tension, something else. The tension of a dog that has made a decision and is committed to it. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. She moved him out of Rosie's room at 10 o'clock. She had a video therapy session starting at 10:15, and she needed to be able to concentrate. She closed Rosie in the play area with her blocks and her sippy cup and put Hank in the laundry room, which he accepted with the quiet dignity of a dog who understands he is being made to wait for something he does not agree with. The session lasted 45 minutes. When she came out, Hank was scratching at the laundry room door with the even measured persistence of a metronome, not frantically, just continuously. She let him out. He went directly to the play area. Rosie was asleep on the floor. She had pulled her own blanket off the arm of the couch and was curled under it with her thumb near her mouth, which was not unusual. Camille stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment, breathing even. Color. She looked at Rosie's face and something tightened in her chest before she could name what she was seeing. The color was slightly wrong. Not dramatically, not the gray she would have known to fear. A pallor around the lips and nail beds, subtle. The kind of thing that registers first in a parent's body before it reaches conscious language. Hank was already beside Rosie, muzzle at the child's cheek. Absolutely still. Camille picked her daughter up. The limpness was a fraction too much. Not unconscious limpness, but the limpness of a body that had diverted resources from maintaining tone. Rosie's hands were cool. Her temperature at the temple was normal. Her breathing was even and shallow and too slow. Camille was already calling the pediatric nurse line while she put Rosie in the car seat. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The blood glucose reading at the clinic was 41 milligrams per deciliter. Normal floor in a toddler is 70. The pediatric endocrinologist who reviewed the results sat across from Camille in the exam room with Rosie on the table. Stabilized now and eating glucose crackers with the enthusiastic single-mindedness of a child who has been frightened of nothing in particular and is simply hungry. He explained what had happened in the language of a clinician explaining to another clinician. Post-viral hypoglycemia, a well-documented phenomenon in toddlers following significant illness. During the sick days, Rosie had not eaten normally. Her body had depleted its stored glycogen. When the virus cleared and her appetite normalized, she had not eaten enough in the recovery window to rebuild those reserves, and the overnight fast had dropped her blood glucose through the floor while she slept. By morning, she was running on a deficit that had been expanding for hours, silently without any of the dramatic symptoms that normally signal a crisis. She had no sweating, no trembling, no classic pallor, nothing severe enough to trigger a parent's alarm, but her breath chemistry had shifted. The pediatric endocrinologist paused here and looked at his notes, then at Camille. "You mentioned the dog." He said it without editorial, the way physicians say things they find interesting but cannot chart. Camille said he would not leave her alone all morning. The endocrinologist explained what dogs detect in the breath of hypoglycemic subjects: volatile organic compounds produced when the body shifts from glucose metabolism to compensatory processes. Isoprene, acetone family molecules. These compounds exist in exhaled air at concentrations measurable in parts per trillion. A dog's olfactory system, with 300 million scent receptors compared to the 6 million in a human nose, registers these shifts long before any symptom is visible. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The clock on the wall read 2:47 in the afternoon. He said, "You brought her in at 1:32. He looked at the chart. Given the rate of decline in cases like this, another 40 minutes and we would have been managing a seizure event. Camille sat with that in the car on the way home with Rosie strapped in behind her, eating the last of the glucose crackers, and commenting on passing trucks with the reliable enthusiasm of a toddler who has no memory of the previous 3 hours. She thought about Hank in the laundry room. She fought about 45 minutes of a video session while he scratched at the door with the patience of something that knew exactly what it was waiting for and was willing to wait as long as it took. She thought about being a pediatric occupational therapist with 8 years of training in reading children's developmental signals and not catching what a Labrador retriever had been trying to show her since before 9 in the morning. She drove home. She put Rosie in the stroller and took Hank on the walk she had not given him that morning. They went around the neighborhood twice. Hank trotted beside the stroller, with his nose working and his tail in the comfortable middle position of a dog who is finished with the important part of his day and has moved on to the pleasant part. Rosie fell asleep again before they reached the corner. Her color was even and warm and entirely normal. Camille watched her daughter sleep and did not look away until they were home.